Morning. Grateful for that time of worship. I needed that. One of the songs we sang mentioned the tearing of the veil, and it's something we sing about and speak about and hopefully occasionally think about. But I know I don't get it. I wish I did. I really wish I could understand what that meant and what that felt like to that first century Jew. Because there's something amazing in that. Here's what little bit I can get about that, because it really is mind-blowing when you think about it. For multiple reasons and multiple purposes, God chose the seed of Abraham to make a special chosen people from. Not all the seed of Abraham, one particular line. And through that line, the Messiah would come to redeem all people, all nations back to him. So that all people could have relationship with God. But in the meantime, we get the law with Moses, which even kind of restricted things even more than they were before that. The closer you get to where God is, the more holiness is required, because God is holy. He is set apart. He is unique. He is unlike any and all other. And so as the nation of Israel was formed and became their people, there was a certain aspect about Israel that was holy just because they were the chosen people, the chosen nation. That made them set apart. But if they wanted to get close with God, they had to go in on the camp. They had to go toward the tabernacle. They had to go toward the temple. Later, after the tabernacle came the temple. You had to go closer. And the closer you got to the temple or the tabernacle, which is where God was dwelling with them, the more restrictive it got. The more clean you had to be. The more holy you had to be. The more limited the access became. So there was a certain level of more than just being an Israelite or living with the Israelites and believing in their God that got you into the courtyard. And then from the courtyard into the temple itself. And the closer and closer you got to the very center where the throne of God, symbolic throne of God, was, the more holy and restrictive it was, to the point where there was only one person on the planet who was allowed to go in, and he only got to do it once a year. Once a year, he got to go into the presence of God. And the restrictions and holiness requirements for that were so strict that he tied a rope and a bell around him so that if the bell stopped moving, they knew to drag him out because he had messed up and died. It was that restrictive. 99.9% of all of ancient Israel never knew what it was like to be in the presence of God. Not the very presence of God. There was a veil between them and God. You're not worthy. You're not able. You can't come. And then Gospels tell us that as Jesus died on that cross for us, the veil was torn from top to bottom. I don't know why it specifies top to bottom, other than maybe that shows just how supernatural it really was, that it was God doing the rending, God doing the tearing. I don't know that it would have made a huge difference if it had been from bottom to top. I don't know if that would have been easier or harder. But I know it was ripped completely in two, perpendicular, so that it couldn't still be blocked. If it had been torn horizontally, it might have been blocked. You could have had the top half fall over, and maybe you could see into the Holy of Holies, but you still couldn't go in. But he tore that veil. And for the first time since Adam, the restrictions were removed. You can go into the very presence of God. God will actually make his home, his presence in you. Your heart can become the Holy of Holies. Not once a year, don't mess up, you'll lose it. 24/7, 365, God with us. His blood makes us righteous. His blood makes us clean. It's not about what we do to get in there. He just made a way and said, come on. And after centuries upon centuries upon centuries of you can't come, you're not worthy. It's not about being worthy anymore. It's just all about Jesus. Because as his body was torn, the veil was torn, and we have access to God because of it. Man, I wish we could get that. I really wish we could just have our minds blown by how amazing that really is. That the creator of the universe would wrap himself in flesh and be torn open and die so that you could come into his presence and live. And not just you, but all. So you will never look at someone that God didn't die for. You will never encounter someone who doesn't have access to the Holy of Holies if they choose to put their trust in Christ. There is still a barrier. It's at the cross. You have to go through the cross. But once you put your faith and trust in what Jesus went through and did, and the work that he did on your behalf to sanctify you and make you clean, to purchase and redeem you back from the bondage and captivity you were born into, to pay the justice that you earned, there is no restriction. There is no barrier left between you and God. That is just as mind-blowing as the fact that the stars stay where they're supposed to stay. That the laws of physics actually stay true and work. How? God. His love for us. That while we were his enemies, while we were unworthy, while we were rebellious sinners, he died and tore away and apart all that separates us from him. The restrictions are gone. Doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, or what's been done to you, you can come into the Holy of Holies in the presence of God and stand clean before your Creator and your sovereign God, who just happens to be your daddy, because he will adopt you and make you his because of what Jesus did on that cross. And we know it's true because the tomb is empty, and he rose, and he lives, proving his power, proving his position, and proving his promise to, through the seed of Abraham and the fulfillment of the law, all people from every tribe, every nation, every ethnicity, every language, every group you can think of can come to him. The veil is torn.